Good morning again. Driving to the Betsain today, I could see the sakura blooming near our home. Spring is here, and for me, when the spring season arrives and the sakura bloom, I think of my tea ceremony teacher, Mrs. Toshie Kakigi. We lost Mrs. Kakigi in the spring of 2012 at the age of 94. And I will always feel so very fortunate to be among the last students she taught in the years before she retired. Some of you may remember her, for she was also a Dharma school teacher here for decades. She was a gentle, humble teacher who taught the elegant art of Japanese tea ceremony in such a warm and unassuming way. I remember in our early tea lessons, Sensei was helping us to understand and appreciate the history of tea ceremony in Japan, which is deeply tied to Buddhism. It is said that tea came to Japan from China in the 9th century. In China and Japan, it was often cultivated and appreciated by Buddhist monks in large monastic temples. In the early 1300s, the enjoyment of tea became more ritualized, and by the late 1500s, tea ceremony had become an inseparable part of Japanese culture. The tea ceremony itself became an art and was cultivated by the imperial family. The emperor and the nobles of Japan often had their own tea masters. One of the most well-known tea masters was a man known as Senor Rikyu. He lived from 1522 to 1591 and was the tea master for the famous daimyo Oda Nobunaga and later Toyotomi Hideyoshi. There are many styles and schools of tea ceremony, and the descendants of Senor Rikyu started 3 of the well-known styles. Regardless of the style, the art of tea tries to cultivate 4 things: harmony, respect, purity, and tranquility. The tea ceremony, or the tea room that Mrs. Kakigi had, was a traditional small room that often fit about 6 zabuton cushions along 2 sides, like an L. There's an alcove in where she would hang a scroll that might have a poem or a picture that brings the present season to mind, and also a flower arrangement, again, a subtle reflection of the season. Everything about the tea ceremony is done to create an atmosphere of harmony, respect, purity, and tranquility. Reverend Bob shared with me a story of his first experience receiving tea ceremony instructions. He was invited into the tea room of a sensei in Kyoto, and he was surprised that there was so much to learn and so much to do to have just a cup of tea. He found that just like a Hondo etiquette, everything had to be done mindfully. For instance, picking up a chopstick, you would hold it in your right hand, move it to your left, and then it would return back to your right hand, very mindfully. And after being offered the sweets to eat or the tea to drink, Sensei explained that he should first place the sweets or the tea between himself and the next guest and say, "Osaki ni chodai itashimasu." It would be similar when offered the tea itself. We would bow to the next guest and say, "Otemai chodai itashimasu." And after taking 1 sip, addressing the one who made the tea, and say, "Kekkou na ofuku kagen de gozaimasu." It's good. The ritual can take a little while, and when the tea is finally served, if you never had it, it's thick and frothy and very bitter. Bob said that when he sat there for so long, his legs were numb with pain, just sitting in that formal position called seiza. And when it was over, Sensei asked him what he thought about the tea ceremony. And typical of my husband with no filter, he responded in his crude Japanese, perhaps too honestly. Cha no yu wa bakarashii desu ne. Meaning, tea ceremony is nuts. It makes no sense. We have to sit until our legs hurt, waiting for 3 sips of bitter tasting tea. Sensei laughed and said, "So desu ne. I guess that could be true. But don't you think sometimes life is bakarashi? That life makes no sense?" He agreed and had to say, yes, sometimes life is bakarashi. Then Bob asked Sensei, if you think tea ceremony is bakarashi, then why do you do it? Why do you teach it? Sensei answered him by saying, every time I make a bowl of tea, I think to myself, this may be the last time I will ever do tea ceremony, cha no yu. And when I serve you, I realize this may be the last time you will be my guest, or that we will be together. With this feeling, I hope you will drink this tea with your whole life, in this moment now, appreciating that we are together. Bob could only nod in agreement. This is so true. The famous tea master, Senryo Rikyu, was trained in the Zen tradition. And among his famous quotes, he said, the way of tea is simple. Boil water, make tea, drink it. But he also said, although people drink tea, they do not know the way of tea. And the way of tea is nothing less than the Dharma path. To live mindfully in the moment with awareness of life's impermanence and life's interdependence. Awareness that everything is constantly changing, yet all things are one in the karmic fabric of the universe. Senryo Rikyu is credited with this phrase that has become so famous that many of you may have heard it. Ichigo, ichie means one time, one meaning. Ichigo, ichie is the essence of tea ceremony and is also the essence of walking the Dharma path. It is to know that every moment, every event, every meeting is once in a lifetime. This moment will never come again. When our Dharma eyes open to this undeniable truth, how could we ever take for granted the gift of this day, this moment right now? For those of you completely unfamiliar with tea ceremony, know that within the ritual and the tradition, there is a deep Dharma message. For the feeling of tea ceremony, in a way, is the message of every service we have in our Dharma tradition, to open our Dharma eyes to the significance of the moment. When I think about the phrase, ichigo, ichie, I think one of the most significant moments happened right here in the Betsuin classroom. As some of you may know, I met Reverend Bob when he was a new young minister at the Los Angeles Betsuin in the mid-1970s. I was a young girl attending YBA conferences in Fresno. And over the years, our paths had crossed a few times, but an age difference of 8 years, being together was never a thought. However, in the early 1980s, some of you may remember that we would often have these over 21 YBA get-togethers. and one was held here at the Betsuin in the classrooms. That particular weekend, my friend Brian drove from Oakland to Fresno, and I drove up from Los Angeles, where I was living, to attend our friend's wedding in Fresno. We both knew that we could not attend the Over 21 conference that weekend here in Sacramento. The wedding was very nice, but during the reception, we decided, why not? Let's just drive to Sacramento, surprise our friends at the dance that evening. The wedding reception was rather quiet, so we decided to leave early. We hopped in the car and drove three hours to Sacramento. And we arrived towards the end of the dance, and I remember seeing many friends, and there was a wonderful surprise to be together. Then I saw a familiar face who happened to come with his friend from San Francisco, who was the DJ that evening. Reverend Bob had no intentions of really attending, but his friend persuaded him to join him, so he came. After saying hello to everyone, I remember seeing Reverend Bob and thinking, oh no, it's that old minister again. What's he doing here? Well, he saw me too, and we talked and we danced a few times. Then before we all left, he asked for my phone number because he was going to be in LA the following weekend, and asked if I wanted to go to Disneyland. Long story short, if Reverend Bob did not travel to Sacramento from San Francisco, and if my friend Brian and I did not leave the wedding reception in Fresno to drive to Sacramento, we probably would have not re-met and would not have gotten together. This one small decision to drive to Sacramento was life-changing. If we think about the life-altering chance meetings we have, or perhaps the opportunities we choose not to take, we understand the depth of this simple phrase, ichigo ichie. For me, this one time, one meeting event 40 years ago, right here in the Betsuin classrooms, was truly an ichigo ichie event. It literally changed the entire direction of my life. Very much like drinking tea, we never know if our meeting, this moment, will be the last time we'll ever see each other, or will it be the beginning of something lifelong? Ichigo ichie is not depressing or even negative. As we are taught in Buddhism, the teaching of impermanence is reality. And when we know this and see this, our Dharma eyes are opened, and we know we must live not taking for granted even one opportunity to be with those we love. We must hold close and treasure the people we love while we have them. With Dharma eyes open, we see that this may be the last time we may be able to have a Betsuin Dharma service and see each other even via Zoom, FaceTime. And with Ichigo Ichie, Dharma eyes open, we know that every time we are able to be together or talk with family and friends is a moment to appreciate, for every moment is once in a lifetime. A true tea sensei would say to us, let us drink in this moment with our whole lives, knowing it will never come again. Ichigo Ichie. In closing, please join me in Gassho. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu.